Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Reviews.
Sonic Battle Racers was this huge Kickstarter game that I was immediately drawn to through to the IP. My son loves Sonic the Hedgehog. We saw the movies, we saw the cartoons, we played the video games. It's just an IP that he is really, really drawn to. So I was really excited about this game. Now, I had the IDW game, which I reviewed, and I've played that, and that was kind of like, I thought would be an appetizer to this game coming out. This is a big boxed game with pre-painted miniatures and beautiful components, and this was like the all-in, had all the characters. Everybody could think of all kinds of different modes on it. Everything you would ever want in a Sonic the Hedgehog game. And boy, did it deliver. This is a really fun game. It's a little bit complicated. There's some things going on. I don't want to say it's like, you know, it's not ASL or anything, but it's a little bit going on. And I feel like you can play with a little bit of that if you want to. If you have younger kids, you can take some of the terrain out if you want. Some of the goofy stuff that's going on, some of the bad guys if you wanted to. But what you're left with is a very, very fun Sonic game that gives you a lot of different decisions that you're making during the game. These are very fun decisions. Now, this is kind of plays more like a video game. You expect it just to be a race to the end. It's not. When you get to the end, the game kind of ends, and then you rally up and you count your points of how well that you did for the game. So it's not necessarily just getting to the end, although that can be a viable strategy. But it's really about what you're able to do in the point system that you would have, say, in a video game. Now, what's particularly interesting is not only is it have a wonderful game for you to play, it's really, really fun and a family weight game that you can really just kind of dig your teeth into. There's so many different options with characters, especially if you get all the expansions. There's boss modes that you can add in. You can play as the bosses. There's a solo mode that's really, really strong. There's a lot in this game and a lot that I can recommend. Do you need to go all in on it? I don't know. Yes. If you like Sonic and you want all of the options and all the different powers and all the different people going on, a lot of female representation, a lot of robots, a lot of bosses, these huge, big, pre-painted miniatures. Really, really, really cool. And this is one of those games that's almost like a guilty pleasure. You just want to dive into and get more stuff for. Fun game. Now, if you're not a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, I don't know if this is going to appeal to you, although the game is still pretty strong. Some of the characters may be a little bit weird, and you might not want to dive in as deep as somebody who's a Sonic fan. But wow, you know, I don't want to overplay it. This isn't the greatest game ever designed, but this is a very, very strong game. I really feel like I'm in a Sonic the Hedgehog video game. And just about every character you could ever want is in this if you wanted to search them out and purchase all the expansions, etc. And I'm going to put a lot of videos up to those expansions, and you can see what really can come into this game. But there's a lot here and a lot to enjoy. And this is a game I highly recommend to anyone. If you want a family racing game that's not just about getting to the end, this could be it. Also, for anyone who's a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, I think this is the game that you can get. Excellent, excellent choice. Excellent job here. One I highly recommend. So in this section of the game, I'm just going to show you the flow of the game. Now, this part of the game, this shows you a game after it's already been finished. So the tracks are out, the turns are out, the finish line. So this is what a game looked like when we were done with it. Now, I'm showing you the flow of the game, but I have to admit that this rule book, which you've already seen when I talked about in the rules, is pretty terrible. There's a lot of FAQ and errata online. I've kind of read through some of it. I'm going to try not to make any mistakes, but I think there's a lot of things that are kind of unsettled about this game. But the general flow of how you play, I think I can get through pretty easily. The main gist of the game is you're going to have 4 of these agility cards in your hand. And on your turn, you're going to play one face down. Your opponent will also play one face down. You'll turn them over. Whoever has the highest number will activate their card first. Then the other players will activate based on these numbers, highest ones first. Then you will discard these, draw a new card from the deck, and then you'll do the whole thing over again. So that part of it is very, very easy. When you set up the game, you're going to start with the start tile, which will look like this. And you'll have one of this that we start and one that's finished. So you take the start, and you're going to put out randomly 2 of these tracks and a turn. So the remainder of this will not be set up. And then if you kind of look on here, you're going to see a bunch of different icons. The yellow ones, you're going to see some rings through here, red ones, etc. So what's really important for setup is the red ones, the yellow ones, and the rings. Very easily, if it has a ring, then you're going to put one of these rings on it. If it has a red one on it, we'll draw one of these tokens from the bag, and you would put it on that spot. Now, if you have the miniatures, then you would get rid of this and just put the miniature on the spot. If you're playing with 1, 2, or 3 players, you will add things to the yellow. Otherwise, with 4, 5, or 6 players, however many you're playing with, you would not fill up the yellow. So yellow is only for 1, 2, or 3 players. So once you have all the goodies on the board, the rings, the bag eyes, the rocks, etc., then you're kind of set up and ready to go. Each player is going to choose a character, and each character is going to have their speed that's tracking. You have these little things. Now, let's kind of note that you only have enough of these for the main players. And then you're going to have an ability that will be ongoing, a power that can be activated through the agility cards, and a place to put your rings. Now, if you have the Kickstarter version, you will have this, that your rings will go on, and they kind of just sit on there like so. But everybody's going to have a different power that's ongoing, and then a power that you can activate through card play. And then on your turn, you're really just going to play these cards, and you're going to activate kind of moving around the board like you would a Sonic the Hedgehog game. So the agility cards are pretty much what's going to function and be the brains behind the game, if you will. So when you play one, you're always going to do, it's going to be initiative order, highest number is going to go first, and then you're going to do whatever at the top is optional. So it's speed. You can add 2 to your speed tracker. You don't actually move, you just move your tracker up. This one says run or jump, so you'll be moving around the board. Another speed. A spin will allow you to be able to defeat certain bad guys, which I'll get to later, or you can move your speed up. You can go forward a space or run a space or speed up. That's a choice that you get to make. You could jump 1 space or do your speed. So these will give you all kinds of options you'll be able to do. Some variation of what I've kind of shown you. Now the bottom, the yellow part's always mandatory. And you're going to have 2 options, which is run, which is just run forward, or jump, which is going to be going up in the air. And there's pros and cons to both. It's important to note that when you're moving the characters, if you're using the top of the space, so let's say it's one of these that says like run a space. This is not clear in the rule book, but it is a correct rule that you can move up. So you're right here with Sonic. You can move up, you can move down, or you can move forward. You can never move diagonal, and you can never move backwards. But if you're moving because what's on, let's say you have one of these on the bottom of the card, the white finger, and you're moving because of the bottom, whether it's a jump or a move, you must always only move forward. So the top of the card will allow you to move up, down, or forward. The bottom of the card is always forward. It's not explicit in the rules. It's in there, but it's kind of hard to find. So just kind of know that that's a general value of the rule. So let me go over a few things in the rules that are pretty simple. So if you go over, even if you run past it, you're going to pick up any rings that you pick up. When you add them, you always add them to, you have enough 5 spots. Whatever the most left one is empty. So if I added 2, there's already 1 here. That's why I would add those. That's how the rings work. Very simple. Now, if you go over any of the rocks, these are obstacles. Your speed will automatically, let's say your speed was on 5. Any obstacle you hit would immediately go to 1, and you would just end your movement. So if I hit a rock, speed goes down to 1, and you move. So you ever seen that in the game, you can't move that quickly. So in the game, you're going to have 4 different types of bad guys. And for the most part, they're going to work relatively the same in groups of 2, but let me kind of go over them with you. You're going to have the Moto Bug. If you have the miniature, this is what it would look like. The Moto Bug will damage any racer running into a space. So if you're running and not jumping and you go into a space, you will get damage. And the way damage is kind of taken care of is, let's say Sonic was running through here, got into Moto Bugs. You can move him up or down, whatever location you're going to go on. And then you would take the rings off of your doohickey here, and you would add them into the rows. You always start with whatever is closest to the bug, so those 2 would go there, and there'd be a ring here that Sonic is already on, and he would get that ring back. If Tails was there or somebody else was there, they would get a free ring for that. So that's kind of how the damage is. Your rings just kind of spread on the board, just like in the video game. And then you're going to have Crab Meat. He's the little crab that would be here. He will damage anybody jumping in these 2 spaces. So let's say Crab Meat was right here. Anybody jumping through these 2 spaces, he will be able to grab and snap at. So if somebody was coming through here while jumping, the crab would be able to attack them. Now, if you remember earlier, I said you could spin. This is something that will last until the end of your turn. These 2 guys can be killed by somebody who is spinning. So if Sonic happened to play a spin card and went through their location, you would take this off the board and put it beside your player mat to score you a victory point at the end of the game. So that's how these two characters work, and they both can be killed by spinning. And then the last two bad guys we have that are here are considered buzzing. And they're going to work a little bit differently. They're not damaged if you run through them, but can be destroyed by jumping. So if you're jumping and you land on top of them, you can kill these guys with no problem. So for the Buzz Bomber, he'll sit here, and if you're running or spinning and you enter the 3 spaces in front of him, then you will be damaged, and you will have to get rid of some of your rings. Now, as for the spinner, he's going to work a little bit differently. He damages any jumper racers entering the space that they are on. So if you end up jumping onto his space, then you will take damage. It's important to note that I've showed you one way that if you have rings, if you're damaged, but the second way would be if you don't have any rings, you reduce your speed to 1, and you go back to the beginning of whatever track rectangle that you happen to be on. So let me show you how the turns work. And what I have here is I have a track going this way, up, and then over. So if you're racing, I'm going this way, up, and over. So this is going to mean is that if I stop on, say, the 4, or I'm on the 4 track, then the maximum speed I can have around this curve is 4. I'll have to immediately reduce my speed down to 4, and if I was moving on this track, I can never go above 4. I can always go below, but not above. And you can also change tracks here, and your maximum speed will be up. Notice that, going around this 3 is a little bit short of a distance, but you're moving a lot slower. So it depends on how many moves you have to get. And there are rings on here that you can obtain that might be on where you're going. You might want to go after those. So that's kind of how that works. Once you leave the spot, then you can get your speed going up again more. So here's the finish line. The game works a little weird. If you notice, there's a lot of the rings on the finish space. That means if you're crossing the finish line, you're probably going to get quite a bit of rings at the end of the game. Even if this is the finish line, this will end the game, but it would not necessarily mean Sonic is the winner just because he was able to finish the game first. What you'll do is you'll count up any rings that you have, plus any of the bad guys you were able to defeat during the game. Remember, when you defeat one of these, you take them and put them by your player mat. So in this case, if I ended the game with 2 rings and I've destroyed 1 bad guy, I would have 3 points. Whoever has the most points is your winner. Now that's just a general overflow of how the game works. I don't intend for you to learn how to play, but that will probably, if you go through the rulebook, answer a couple questions for you. There is some errata and facts available online. I think a new updated rulebook at this time is being rewritten, but this will give you a general idea of some of the things that are going on. Now, I do want to point out one last thing. Now, there are obstacles like these things. They work just like the rocks I described. And there are some elevation things that are going on. So when you're water, you reduce your speed down to 2, and you're in an elevation of -1. And you can see on some of these, you'll see some higher elevations that will go up. This one right here has a +1 that will go up. So anytime that you're going over an elevation, something can happen to you. If you're running and you're going to an elevation that is higher, then you will hit an obstacle, stop your movement. So you kind of need to jump up if you're going to an elevation that is higher. That's important to note. Now, if you're jumping and it's 2 points, so if you're going from -1 maybe to +1, that's a difference of 2. Then it's still an obstacle even if you're jumping or landing on that spot. So that can be an obstacle where it take your speed down to 1, but also ends your movement. There are some spaces like these accelerators that will just give you more speed. They don't push you forward, but they do increase your speed that you're tracking on your character card. So that's a good general overview that pretty much tells you everything. There's a little nitpicking that you might have when you're playing the game. Feel free to comment. I'll be happy to jump in the best I can. BGG is always a great source. But that is the basic game of how to play Sonic Battle Racers. Rule book for Sonic Battle Racers. It's very nicely printed. You're going to have your contents over here that kind of tells you what the components are with pictures, everything, and objective, and a little bit of racer profile. It's important to note that there are some rules kind of in this page. For example, the power of the racer and how it can be activated. So you want to be very aware there are rules hidden in this. The racers explain the agility cards. Once again, there's a rule in here that when you do the yellow part at the bottom, that you have to move forward. This is printed elsewhere in the book, but it's important that it's there. And it kind of tells you the outline of the track sections and how to win. It's important to note that you do not win the game by finishing the race first. It's a victory point game. You have games set up with no picture. Boo! I mean, it'd been really nice, but it's not that difficult to do. And how to play agility cards. This is really the meat of the game, is the agility card system. And in the beginning of a new round, it's nice that it kind of fills up, one page and didn't go over into another page. Then you have the track set up and kind of how that works, how you connect these things and put things on. And then movement and some of the icons, damaging, really confusing here with what's going on here. And then the elevations, I struggle with that a little bit. I think reading some facts in errata, I kind of got it down, or at least have a good idea of what I'm doing. General track overview and some of the terrain features. Then what you're going to find is a solo mode. For some reason, it's kind of stuck in there, and then the reference. I wish there is a track reference card player that comes with it, but this is really nice. I do like this. And having it open right here is very helpful. And then boss mode, if you want to get some of the boss mode and some of the expansions. So everything for the expansion is all in one rulebook here at the back. So you can add these kind of things in if you want. A little bit of an advertisement, a Pokemon thing, collect them all. It's not Pokemon, it's for Sonic. And then just credits on the back. Might have been nice to have a reference. But you are going to have a pretty nice track reference card here that people can utilize during the game. And then you're going to get these player aids that will tell you give one to each player for the reference cards and the items that you'll have in the game. So these are actually pretty nice. These are regular card stock. This is, fairly nice. And the rule book. I do have to say the rule book is not good. I was very confused with my first playing. I had to go online, look at the FAQ and the errata, which isn't 100% yet. They're still building this. I heard they're going to be redoing this rule book and rewriting it. It's a light enough game where you can have fun with your kids and have a pretty good time, but the rulebook left a little bit to be desired. And I think once I went online, I read some stuff, I was able to go back to the book and say, hey, I guess it was in there, but that was really weird. I'm not 100% sure. It wasn't clarity. And there's a lot of good questions on BGG that still haven't been answered. With that said, I think this is a light little Sonic racing game. It's intended for families, maybe even younger kids, although it's pressing the luck there with too young of kids. But I think the rulebook is mediocre at best, and not very good, if I must be honest. Who should buy this game? I feel like this is a really good game for families. You can really take some of the stuff out very easily and play without some of the terrain and some of the spikes and stuff if you wanted to. And then you can add those in as you progress. I love that. Even though it's not technically in the rules, very, very easy to do. This game has a lot of different characters, a lot of different people you can play with to keep things spiced up, a lot of expansion. I like how the characters come in one expansion pack that you can track down if you wanted to. Makes little stocking stuffers or makes a little small gift if you want to get somebody. It's really, really neat. I can even see maybe getting the base game for a birthday, have everybody else bring the expansions and additional gifts. That could be a really cute idea. Let me tell you, this is a really fun. This is Sonic the Hedgehog in a box. Very good job. This doesn't take away from any of the other games that came out for the system, like the IDW game, which I think is very strong. This is a very, very good game. It has all of the characters you could want. If you're a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, this is the game that you want. Highly recommend. You really need to track this one down. Thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you liked it, please like it and hit that little subscribe button. That really helps out the channel. Lets us know that you're getting the videos that you want. If you agreed or disagree with what I said, feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I promise that I will comment back. Thanks for watching, and everybody else, keep playing.